And we're back. Welcome to day 2 and the final day of the second round of the Carabao Cup after a night where there were some massive shocks. I think the highlight of the night has to be Stoke City winning 5-0 away at Middlesbrough. Yes, that was an all-championship tie, but such a huge victory for the away team was a real surprise. Apart from that, you still had the likes of Barrow beating Derby, Leyton Orient winning at Millwall, Blackpool winning away at Blackburn, and a couple of others in there as well. So if your side were one of the ones who produced a shock last night, congratulations to you. But sadly, I think for the football romantics, once again, every single Premier League team winning pretty comfortably. At least the good news going into tonight's fixtures is that there definitely are going to be Premier League teams going out, but that's only because you've got Premier League teams playing against each other. So, as always, before we get into it, if you haven't done so already, please do consider dropping a like on this video and subscribing to the channel if you are new around here. Of course, the draw for the third round will be tonight as well, with all of those European teams coming into it as well. And a reminder that our European predictions will be starting as soon as the Champions League, Europa League and Europa League start proper. And without any further ado, let's have a look at today's fixtures, where I can also remind you about how I got on last night in terms of the 18 games that were played yesterday. I got 12 of them correct in terms of who actually progressed. However, sadly, no correct scores, which is a little bit disappointing, but I'll still take 12 out of 18 in terms of actual correct results. That means that our season total now goes to 46 out of 76, but only 5 correct scores so far. But do you know what? We're not doing too bad. We're starting to build up some momentum. Let's see how many of the 7 games being played tonight that we will get correct. Starting off with the game between Wolves and Burnley. Now, obviously, this was an all-Premier League tie last season. Burnley now back in the Championship, but have made a really positive start to life back in the Championship. However, they're basically selling all of their best players. It's kind of mental what's happened in the last week. Odegaard's gone to Spurs. Amdoumi's now leaving. Zahouri's left. Sander Berg has gone to Fulham. A lot of Burnley's key players. I mean, I'd go along the lines of saying Wout Weghorst is going to Ajax, but he wasn't really playing anymore at Burnley anyway. But still, to give away that much quality when you've made such a positive start to Championship life, obviously it shows faith in the team that they've got available to them, but it's a bit of a worry for them. And coming up against a Premier League side like Wolves, you kind of want those key players available to you, and they're not going to be available to them. So for me, this is a game that I thought could end up being really close. I still think it could be pretty close, but now with the extra weight on Wolves' side, I'm going to have to go for Wolves, and I'm going to go for a 2-0 win to the Premier League side. Bizarre transfer business going on at Burnley, in my opinion, right now. From a game that would have been all Premier League last season to a game that would have been all Championship last season. It is Cardiff City taking on Southampton, now, of course, of the Premier League. Southampton with an absolutely rotten start to their Premier League campaign, losing both games in quite miserable fashion. Cardiff, on the other hand, have also started off their season absolutely horrendously down in the Championship as they sit bottom of the table right now. So the two bottom sides of the respective divisions, who's going to come out on top? I'm still going to go for Southampton. In the head-to-head last season in the Championship, it was Southampton who had the better overall. I think there was a win for both home sides respectively, but Southampton had the better of it in terms of if it had gone to goal difference, shall we say. But I'm going to go Southampton. We know their style of play. They've signed well. Cardiff are also struggling, like we said. And I think Southampton realistically should be getting the result here. Failure to do so is going to seriously heap pressure on Russell Martin early on this season. Next up, it is Swansea City taking on Wycombe as we stay in Wales for this fixture. Another pretty tough one to call, to be honest with you, but Swansea have made a relatively positive start to the season in the Championship. Wycombe are doing okay in League One. And again, it's just that classic case of, I think the Championship team are more likely to win this, especially since they've made a good start to their respective season in the higher division. So I'm just going to go for a blanket 2-0 to Swansea. Wycombe have looked pretty decent. Defensively, they've done very well so far this season. But again, I just think the Championship quality is just about going to shine through. Next up, the potential of a big upset as we have a League Two side facing a Premier League side. In fact, our next 2 fixtures are a League Two side at home to a Premier League side. This one is Wimbledon taking on Ipswich Town. Ipswich doing lots of business in the transfer transfer window over the course of this week. We've already spoken about Dara O'Shea from Burnley going to Ipswich. They've now agreed a deal to sign Ogbene from Luton this morning. They're still trying to sign Armando Broja from Chelsea. They're doing an awful lot of work at Ipswich to try and boost their Premier League squad going into this season. And again, against a side like Wimbledon down in League Two, who aren't doing too badly, and obviously they've had to get to this round on their own merit, I still just can't back against a Premier League team. I just think the days of huge upsets like this are just slowly fading away. And we talk about it all the time now in regards to the fact that the gap between the Championship and the Premier League is getting larger and larger and larger. So the gap from League Two to the Premier League is going to be even larger still. So I'm going to go for Ipswich. I'm again going to go for a 2-0 result. I don't think Wimbledon are going to cause too many problems. Again, they've got a pretty good defensive record, Wimbledon, in League Two so far. But the way Ipswich play, you'd expect them to pick Wimbledon off. So I'm going to go for 2-0. That then brings us to Colchester taking on Brentford. And pretty much copy and paste, really. Colchester aren't doing too bad. Brentford have made a pretty decent start to their season, in my opinion, with all of the drama surrounding their respective transfers. Is Ivan Toney leaving? Bids for Johan Visser from Nottingham Forest. Are Brentford even going to have a striker come the end of deadline day? I don't think it's going to matter for a game like this. Again, you'd expect the Premier League class to show through. Colchester are a side that like to score goals, so I'm going to give them 1. But I'm going to give Burnley 3, as I thoroughly expect their quality to shine through in this one. And even if they do make changes, they really should be beating a side like Colchester, with all the greatest of respects to Colchester, of course. That then leaves us with 2 all-Premier League ties left then. Firstly, we have West Ham taking on Bournemouth. When these two sides met last season, it was 1-1 draws, both home and away. And at the start of this season, they've both made relatively good starts. So it does make this one a really hard one to call. The question again is always going to be, are these sides going to make changes, or are they going to stay as strong as they possibly can? I think West Ham are probably more likely to make changes than Bournemouth, because I think Iraola does like to have cup runs, whereas I can see Lopetegui wanting to try out some of his other new signings. So makes it a little bit more interesting to call, but I still just think with West Ham being the home side, they're going to be the ones that end up edging it. I'm going to go for 2-1, which might be a bit daft. Like I say, both games were 1-1 last season, so it might have made more sense to go for a 1-1 draw and then have this one settled on penalties. But I do think that West Ham are going to end up edging this one, hopefully within the 90 minutes rather than a penalty shootout for the sake of my prediction. But I'm going to go for 2-1 to West Ham. And then finally, the other all-Premier League tie is Nottingham Forest taking on Newcastle United, where you can bet that all the talk is going to be about Sandro Tonali, who could make his return this evening. One person who will be sort of making a return is Elliot Anderson, who of course was a Newcastle player up until last month, until he signed for Nottingham Forest. This will be his first match against his former employers. Nottingham Forest, again, mixed start to the season. In fact, both of these sides have started this season with 1-1 draws and 1-0 victories. So they're in exactly the same position in the Premier League table as things stand right now. But for me, the quality is in Newcastle's favour. Even if they make changes, I think Newcastle would still have to be considered the favourites. Yes, Nottingham Forest have a ridiculously deep squad, and you can argue that they are one of those sides that you could change their entire 11 and the quality of the team doesn't drop off. I just don't think that level of quality is at the same level of quality as Newcastle. So I'm going to go for 2-0 to Newcastle. I back Newcastle defensively, and I think they're going to be able to keep Nottingham Forest out. If I'm wrong, then who knows what is going to happen. It also means that I've not gone for a single penalty shootout tonight. But considering there were 18 matches yesterday and there were only 2 penalty shootouts, I'm pretty happy to not go for any penalty shootouts here. I think if there's going to be any draws across these fixtures, it's probably going to most likely be the 2 Premier League fixtures or that Cardiff against Southampton game. But I'm pretty confident with all the fixtures I've gone for today. Let me know all your thoughts down in the comment section below. Thank you very much for watching as always. I will see you again on Friday morning for the next round of the Premier League.